All right. Good morning, everybody. I've got some things on over the screen here, so I'm going to be using that a little bit. I've started recording this. A few housekeeping things to get out of the way at the top before we get started. Thursdays are typically reserved. This is our work from home series. All of you that are on here have been on previous webinars as well, so you know that already. And on Thursdays, we typically focus on working on your business as opposed to some of the mechanics behind functioning as a normal business in this business unusual environment, which is what our Tuesday sessions are typically designed to do. But Thursdays are designed to be working on your business. As a number of our clients and a number of our partners, and most everybody I can see who are attending today, I haven't scrolled through the whole list over there, are subject to this, have been asking us about what's going on with the New York State Department of Financial Services and New York State in general relative to a lot of the requirements that they have around their business and what they must be doing from a reporting perspective, from a compliance perspective, and just keeping the department and or the Secretary of State of New York, the Secretary of the State of New York, informed as to what you're doing, whether it is related to the Department of Financial Services or more broadly to the SHIELD Act that went into effect earlier this year, which actually expands the footprint of DFS, not the department per se, but the regulations considerably, even though on paper it looks smaller. And we're doing a webinar on SHIELD downstream for a variety of the associations we do business with and a variety of our partners that do business also with the departments in the state of New York. So with that as a backdrop and some additional housekeeping, at the bottom of your screen, this is being recorded, as I said earlier, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A and a chat. So if you can put your questions in there, any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer. I'm going to live answer them. So I'm not going to be typing responses to that because I'm flying solo here. I'm working from home. I have the screen behind me. That's my portable one, just so that I can have that behind me instead of looking at the home office mess. I will be in my office later on. We're an essential service, as you know. But having said that, if you have any questions as we're going through this, just post them in the Q&A or post them in the chat, and I will keep my eye on that over there, which is why I continue to look over there and go through the answers to those questions for you right here live at Leeds. Okay, on that note, let me get rid of this presentation screen and let me share this. So today's session, we're going to be talking about the Department of Financial Services. I assume you can all see this on my screen. If not, just throw that in the chat. Back in March, they had issued guidance to any covered entity. Now, covered entities, for those that are not familiar with it, even though you may be on here and are obligated to some of these cybersecurity compliance requirements. A covered entity is any organization that is regulated by or overseen by the New York State Department of Financial Services. And it doesn't matter where the company is domiciled, meaning where you're headquartered. So for instance, and many of you know this, we've got clients in 37 states around the country and several overseas clients as well. And that's because although they're domiciled where they are, whether it's Michigan or Hawaii or Italy, it doesn't particularly matter, because they're doing business with people in New York State, they are, by doing business with people in New York State who transact within those areas that the department oversees, they're obligated to do certain things, and therefore they are a covered entity. Under New York SHIELD, that is every business that does business in the state of New York. When it comes to the Department of Financial Services, those are businesses that are regulated by the Department of Financial Services. So they cover the gamut of everything from, on a broad scale, banking, all the way down to insurance agents or title insurance agents, even title companies. And so there's a swath of businesses that are covered, that are regulated by and overseen by the Department of Financial Services, and those are called covered entities. And every covered entity is obligated to report to the department. And every company that does business in New York is obligated to report to the Secretary of State, the state of New York, under SHIELD. The Department of Financial Services regulation is 23 NYCRR 500, otherwise known as the cybersecurity regulation. Under the state of New York's umbrella for every business, that's the SHIELD Act, which stands, don't even ask what it stands. I know what it is, I just can't think of it off the top of my head. So while I'm speaking today more specifically about the Department of Financial Services, this does apply to SHIELD and the Secretary of State, and we have people up in Albany. I sound like I'm on the criminal enterprise side, but we have people in Albany that keep us abreast of what's going on. It's why we generally know about things long before they hit the media or hit even your inbox when the department or the secretary decides to send something out. And so we already know that the Secretary of State is working on a similar guidance for all businesses that do business in New York State. And that is almost every business in the country that isn't a small business, because, as you know, the New York economy as an economy itself is one of the largest in the world. And because there's such a concentration of people in the state of New York, that drives businesses to want to do business in the state of New York. And as a result of that, everybody's obligated under the Secretary of State. So toward that end, let's just talk a little bit about this letter that came out. And this came out on March 10th. And originally you had 30 days to reply, which meant that you had till April 10th. However, due to COVID-19, due to the governor's declaration of a state of emergency, due to the shelter-in-place orders and all of the other things, that has been extended to the end of May 25th to be exact. And as a result of that, you've gotten this latitude and leeway to be responsive to this. And the reason why we've been keeping you informed of this throughout the course of it, but why we just released this e-blast here on the right just the other day is because actually the department and the Secretary of State has been adjusting the language of their guidance. And what this current form is, we're told, is the final form. And there's going to be no further adjustments to that, excepting perhaps extending it further down the road if unfortunately, if the hospitalization or death counts continue to spike. They may adjust that further downstream. But having said that, right now the assumption is this is in place through May 25th, which is when you're going to have to be responsive to this guidance by the department. And what they want is an email. They basically want a response, an email to the department right here. And we make note of that also in here in the e-blast that we sent out. Now, what they're looking for is effectively your business continuity plan. Now, all of you should have one. All of you who, if you go into your portals, your compliance portals, you'll see there's a business continuity plan. In fact, we've added additional things specific to COVID-19 and particularly this operational assuredness as an addendum, if you would, to a business continuity plan. We haven't wrapped it into the business continuity plan, primarily because these are not, business continuity is more typically seen as those kinds of disasters that are transient in nature and have some likelihood of happening, though reasonably far-fetched. Pandemics are beyond far-fetched. They almost never happen. That's not to say they don't. We've really had 3 of them in the last 100 years, but that's how far-fetched they kind of are. Fires, floods, hurricanes, things like that. Those are kind of the far-fetched things that fall under a typical business continuity plan. Pandemics are not typically included in business continuity plans because their impact is dramatic, and they include things like this whole stay-at-home concept, which now that you're going to include it, you're going to keep it on there forever, but typically not included in a business continuity plan. So for those who don't want to include it, we have not made it an addendum in the compliance portal. but I'm sorry, we have not included it in the business continuity plan that's in the compliance portal. It is there as an addendum for you, this operational assuredness. And so something you should take a look at, something you're going to have to update for yourselves. Now, with that, let's take a look at what the department is asking. Now, I'm not going to go through their letter ad nauseum. They're covering 6 items specifically that we break out into a plan that we shared with you all. I think it was late last week or earlier this week. I'm thinking it's late last week, and I could be mistaken on that. I'll have to check with my marketing team. So what they're looking for is they want to make sure that your business continuity plan includes how you are going to be operationally ready to conduct business in this business unusual environment. This COVID-19, stay at home, everybody working remotely. In general, you are an essential service, and therefore you're not only allowed to stay open, to some degree you're obligated to stay open. That's what's interesting also, that the Secretary of State and or the department has designated some business as not just essential, but within that essential, you must be available to your clients. And that is, it's somewhat of a unique position that you're in, because depending on how COVID-19 has impacted you or affected you, that may be more difficult for you than others. But having said that, they do expect your plan to address how you are operational in this business unusual environment. So they want you to provide them the operational assurance, and that's why the title of this is the assurance relating to potential financial risk relative to the outbreak of this coronavirus. So they want an assurance that you are going to be operationally effective in transacting your business. So that's what this is all about. It's not just technology. I want to be clear about that. A lot of people have reached out to us, partners and clients alike, have reached out to us and say, great, what's my IT plan for this? This is not solely an IT plan. This is a business continuity plan. And while IT professionals can help provide much of that, and for those clients that leverage those IT outsourced companies to do that for them, it's a terrific opportunity to expand that relationship to the overall business continuity. And not all businesses do that. A lot of businesses rely on their outsourced IT companies to provide technology continuity. The problem is that when they run into these other forms of disasters like this particular pandemic, they don't know who to turn to necessarily when they're looking for, what do I do about the fact that now I have all these people working from home, or now that I'm working from home, quite frankly. And so, as you've noticed, one of the things that we've been doing on these Thursday calls, I've taken the responsibility upon myself and our company to be much bigger than just a service-related business. We're here to make sure that we help you get through this at all levels of your business. And so as a result of that, we bring in experts in insurance and legal counsel and finance and a variety of other areas to help you get through this beyond the 4 corners of technology. And this compliance, this business continuity, is all about how are you going to maintain operations, the full suite of operations during this pandemic. And so they want that assurance by your assessment of credit risk ratings of your customers and counterparties, third parties like us and other third parties. How are you making sure that they are viable through this pandemic? An assessment of credit exposure, assessment in scope and size of credits adversely impacted. So again, I'm not going to go through this ad nauseum because there's a lot to unpack, and I actually hate that term, but in some instances it's a valid term. There's a lot to unpack in these statements, which is why we sent this out to help you develop that plan. And so as you go through this letter, and this is what they want you to be responsive to, we provided this bulleted plan for how you can develop it. Now, as I said, you should already have a business continuity plan. For some of you, it's probably up here. That's fine generally on a day-to-day basis. Here's where I strongly recommend you get it out of there. Well, right now you're mandated to get it out of there. You've got to actually document it and send it to the department and or the Secretary of State and say, this is how we're going to be operationally effective. It's a terrific opportunity if you have it up here to leverage the portal and grab that right out of here and update it accordingly. So here, like, this is a business continuity certification form for third parties. This is how this is the form you would use when assessing that third party that we talked about over here. So these counterparties and other business sectors and impacted by it. So how are you comfortable and confident that your vendors who supply core systems to your business such that you can transact business, how can you be comfortable in the fact that they are going to be operating continuously, that their business continuity plan that they have in place is stable and robust? And this form that we provided for you in here allows you to do that. And again, for some, we do that for you. For others, you need to do that on your own. Regardless, there's a form in there that helps you do that. And I'll tell you what, your vendors are ready, willing, and able to provide that certification. They're wanting to help you get through this. Because when we all get through this together, we come out on the other side of this much stronger. We come out of this in a much better position, and therefore our clients and customers come out of it in a much better position. So they lean on us to be that source of strength as they get through this. So that's what that's all about. So you're going to want to document it. There's a business continuity plan in the portal for those that we provide that for you. We've already done that for you in general. If you've leveraged us for technology and not really the broader business side of things, you're going to want to make sure that you get in there. Again, you should be leaning on the IT people for this. And here's why. It's not just because we generally know more than just IT. We are, as technology professionals, we operate daily in chaos. That's a fact. Where most businesses have a finite set of operational activities that they go through, and a very finite set of vendors they do business with. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that your businesses are simplistic. I'm merely saying that your business has a number of line of business vendors, a number of retail shrink-wrapped vendors, think Microsoft and things like that, and then you have other typical vendors like those who you pay rent to, your utility companies, et cetera. So it's called those your utilitarian vendors. And then you have your customer set, whatever that looks like. Maybe you're operating in a niche, maybe you're more of a generalist in nature, but you have your customer set. And those are the let's call them your business bubble for the sake of this discussion. And so you can generally manage that. That is not true for technology companies, because if you think about it, for all of the businesses that technology companies manage, most technology companies do vendor relationship management. They manage the employee interaction with technologies and vendors as well. They manage what's going on in your business, and they do that across a swath of verticals and business sectors. So even if an IT or technology service firm that you do business with has, let's say they've got 20, 30, 40 clients, if they're spread out across a couple of sectors, or even if they're within the same sector, they're probably using different line of business apps, they're probably using different shrink wrap, they probably have different utilitarian vendors. And so as a firm that supports all of that, by definition, we are supporting a far larger footprint of interactions, and necessarily that creates chaos. And so we are dealing with chaos on a day-to-day basis. So when a lot of people have asked me before, how is it you've weathered this storm? What seems to be easy, it has not been easy. We have suffered the same stresses, if you would, that you have as well. The difference is that we leaned in, and I've used that term frequently, and many of you on this call have heard me say that in the past. We've leaned in because we already knew what to do. We had a business plan in place to execute on this chaos, not because we expected it, but because we live in chaos on a day-to-day basis. We call it organized chaos. And it's because we know that we've got things coming up in the myriad sectors that we do business with. We know that they have myriad line of business applications. We know those vendors are going to be dealing with their own sets of nonsense. And we know that we've got thousands upon thousands upon thousands of employees that we have to help navigate the complexities of all of those relationships. And because we do that on a day-to-day basis already, we were primed and ready to deal with this. Was there a lot more that we had to deal with? Yes. All of a sudden, thousands upon thousands of people had to work from home. All of a sudden, systems had to be dealt with and upgraded and ensure that it had the robustness to handle all of this additional complexity. But we weren't deer in the headlights. We weren't unsure of what needed to be, we weren't unsure of what we needed to do to attack it. And then we just needed to put the plan in place to make that happen. And so we were ready to do that. So because we were dealing with that to begin with on a day-to-day basis, we were ready to execute. We executed day one. And that's true with a lot of my colleagues in this space. So this is no superhero cape that I'm wearing for us. This is nothing, I'm not speaking to that from an ego perspective. I'm speaking to that from the perspective of, in our line of work, this is what we do. And so I don't mean to be speaking about us so much. I'm merely using that as a framework to say that our plans were in place. So I knew which vendors I can count on. I knew which employees I could count on. I knew what we needed to do. And so we're here to help. Your other services are there to help. Lean on them heavily. Toward that end, as you're going through this departmental obligation to be responsive to them and to be responsive to the Secretary of State, lean on your vendors to help fulfill this obligation of reporting. And it won't be hard to do. Where it's going to get hard to do is if you have it up here and you have it memorialized, okay, this is my list of vendors. These are their key contacts. This is what they've told me. So you haven't gone through that. You're going to need to do that now, and you're going to need to memorialize that in a list. And so if you take a look at this letter here that we sent out, well, there's no point in expanding it. It's the way it looks anyway. Let's make that, we can zoom in a little bit. As long as it doesn't fly off the screen. Okay, good. So basically this plan's development and execution follows a 9-step strategy. If you follow this strategy, I can assure you this isn't 2 man days. What do I mean by that? And I'm not being sexist when I say that. We call them man days because in an 8-hour day is just a man day or a person day. So within those 2 man days of working on this, and you can spread it out. This isn't sit down at a desk for 16 hours and do it, because there's going to be pieces of this puzzle that you're going to put in place predicated on waiting for information to come back from vendors and the like. I see that someone has a question about sending out this letter again. Yes, we will send this letter around again at some point today, but after this webinar. Also note that this webinar is being recorded, and we will send a link to it so that you can come back to it and look at it later on. If you want to show it to anybody in your organization, that's fine as well. And so this is a 9-point plan to be able to update and or create your business continuity plan which is this assuredness of continuity that the department wants, the Secretary of State wants. Again, we've got a great template in the portal here. And I'll see if I can't take a look at it. What I'm showing here are some things that I call out in this letter that we sent out. One is this COVID-19 contingency plan. The other is this breach and policy breach and notification policy. And the other is the business impact analysis. All three of those are in this portal. Here's the business impact analysis sheet. If I went up here and I looked for COVID-19 contingency plan, you can see there is a COVID-19 contingency plan. There's actually a couple of iterations of that. So point being that these are in the portal. If for whatever reason you don't see them there, just shoot a note over to our team and they will either highlight and or make sure that it's enabled for you. You may not see it if it's not enabled, though you can enable it yourself. That notwithstanding, happy to do that. So that don't feel like you can't lean on us for that. So just reach out to your rep, your account manager. More than happy to do that. With respect to are those templates filled out? For our clients, those templates are filled out to the extent that the visibility we have into the organization. For others, they are templates that you will then fill out. There is an attachment provided with each template that you can download. It's either in a Word format or an Excel format so that you can use a standard retail line of business application to help you edit it. All right, so use that. I strongly encourage you to use that. And just so you know, all of those forms and templates that are in the portal are NIST-based, and they have seen thousands of audits across our entire base, and none of them have been kicked back. And again, I'm not saying that with ego. We write them. They go through our in-house counsel. They get signed off by our in-house counsel long before they get put into the portal. So they are vetted heavily, which is why, and I knock wood when I say that, I probably shouldn't say it out loud, but they've never been kicked back to us. So that's good. The important thing to know about templates, however, and I use this and I say this with extreme caution for you, that you need to read it and you need to make sure it includes language that's relevant to the way you operate. Because the department and the secretary is on the lookout, and this is true for every state. So as I said, we operate in 37 states, from California to Texas to Michigan to Florida to Virginia to New York, et cetera, et cetera. And in every single state, auditors are on the lookout for templates. And that's because a lot of companies sell you these templates and they forget to tell you that, hey, you need to make sure that they work for your company. So we say this over and over again, read them and make sure they're applicable to your company. And if they are not, edit them so that they are. Because if an auditor walks into your company and looks at it and he's seen it somewhere else, you are virtually guaranteed that they're going to have follow-on questions. And nobody wants to go down that road. Nobody needs to go down that road if you just had read it once. Because I can also tell you, you're going to spend a lot more time being responsive to auditors than you would simply reading and editing a template. Also, a note to everybody, and I have a lot of people that ask this, well, should I just give them everything? No. Be responsive to if they've asked for this, give them this, not this and, oh, by the way, that. And I say that out loud. Our attorney will say that out loud. I am confident your attorney will say that out loud. Give them only what they ask for. It's not because you're hiding anything. It's because whatever else you give them can open up a can of worms that have no impact whatsoever. And I can tell you this not just casually. We have somebody who's currently undergoing an examination, And the auditor is asking for more things that are quite frankly not even relevant to the audit, but because they gave them TMI, too much information, it's opened up a can of worms. And that can of worms is costing them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in extra time being invested in developing the other information this auditor is asking for. So give them only what they ask for. Don't hide anything, but give them only what they ask for. Okay, so you're going to want to follow these 9 steps. This is a proven strategy, and not because I say so, but because people have taken these plans. We've taken these plans, and we've taken these steps and strategies and used them, put them together using the templates that we have in the portal, and with that handed them out, and they have passed muster. And so you're going to want to follow that. So the first thing you don't want to do is identify key products and services. Not every product and service. What do you absolutely need? What must you have to conduct business? Okay? The person that delivers water to your office is a vendor. Are they key? No. Well, unless you don't have water, but that notwithstanding. Point being that Staples is not a key vendor. Maybe Epicor is. I'll use just a line of business vendor. Maybe QuickBooks is, Intuit is. QuickBooks Online if you use them. So you want to list the key products and services that you need to run your business. When you're doing that, you want to consider the share of the income they generate, the number of clients demanding them, the cost of non-delivery. These are the factors that go into you evaluating which one of your products and services are key to operational integrity, meaning the ongoing operations of the enterprise. Okay? You want to establish what is your objective for the continuity plan. So what does that mean? That means what am I trying to get out of? What am I trying to get out of this business continuity plan? Well, for some, depending on the essential service that you are, if you're being mandated to keep your doors open, then your objective is to make sure you can keep your doors open, make sure you can transact business. And so elements of that, and I'll use a variety of industries here. If you have to do emergency healthcare as an example, an element of that is to make sure that, frankly, your water's turned on, because if you're a dentist, you have to rinse out mouths. And right now, those guys are really hard hit, and I feel really bad for them because even in an emergency, they have to provide the services, and they are front and center of how transmission happens. Or if you're in the banking sector and you need to transact, you need to fund a loan or transact an origination or whatever the case may be. And so in those sectors, you have to make sure that your line of business vendors are in place. You have to make sure you have access to systems. You have to make sure that your internet pipes are open. So those become the key vendors that you're looking at as you're looking at the objectives of your continuity plan. You want to assess the preparedness of third-party vendors. As I said before, you need to make sure that your vendors are operationally sound during this time. So what I know, technology, if you look at your technology vendors, every single one of them is technology sound. Operationally sound. As I said, they've operated in chaos day one. More importantly, every single technology vendor, at least that I know, are built to be mobile. We use systems that deliver services in something called SaaS, SaaS, which is software as a service. So we live in the clouds of Amazon and Azure and DigitalOcean, and so we have access to all of them. We make sure that they're stable. And we do that when we're deploying, not when we're undergoing pandemic, because we need to make sure we can deliver services to all of you. And as a result of that, we have high confidence in the integrity of their systems. The question is, do you have high confidence in the integrity of your other third-party vendors? Whether, again, if your dental practice is the 800-pound gorilla in the dental space is Henry Schein, is their support team operational? Are their hosted services operational? If you're in banking, you've got a million line of vendors. Are they sound or are they operational? And so you want to assess them and make sure that they are there. That assessment, it can be as simple as that third-party form I showed you. So if I jump back over here and I just want to, let me just do a quick thing here. If I do third really quick, there's this third-party business continuity form. So this is a PDF, a fillable PDF that we've sent out to our vendors. You can send out to your vendors where they can basically just check a couple of boxes. Demonstrating assuredness. You have to have reasonable confidence that they're telling the truth. Okay, if you don't think so, remember I told you it's going to take you about 2 person days to fill this out, this continuity plan, if you only have it in your head. If you need to call every vendor, it's going to take longer than that. You have to have confidence your vendors are telling you the skinny. Frankly, if you're doing business with someone, you already trust them. Just make an assumption they're telling you the truth. And so get them to fill out that certification form, send it around to all of them. They'll send it back, put it in the portal so you have a central location, because I can promise you the secretary or the department's going to come back and ask, okay, how can you prove to me that your vendors said that they were operationally sound? Well, Mr. or Mrs. Auditor, here you go. Here's all the forms that we got back from our vendors. So that's an easy way to do it. Evaluate the likelihood of increased risk due to the expanded attack surface of a cyber threat landscape. So this is more specific to the cybersecurity mandate and more specific to the attack surface of your organization and the threat vectors that attach themselves there too. What the heck did I just say? So the attack surface of your organization means all of the ways that a cyber attack can get into your company. Some of them are technological in nature. Most of them are human in nature. Right now, attackers, the hackers, these bad actors, have literally quintupled the number of social engineering, phishing attacks that they've leveled against businesses. Because 2 things are absolutely true. The first thing is, even now, and we've been at this, 52 days today, if I'm not mistaken, 52 or 53, even now, people are still in somewhat of a chaotic state. And there's a lot of confusion. And it's some of it is subsiding, don't get me wrong, but there's still confusion. And so because when there is confusion, people are easier prey. Think about why our military and our protective forces like police and et cetera use flashbang grenades. It's because it creates confusion for the people in the room before they run in and take them down. So that confusion opens up the attack surface. Again, think about the analogy I just gave you. They drop in a flashbang grenade, and the people in the room are now confused by the blinding light, the deafening sound, and the smoke that follows. And so that confusion allows our police force and our military force to go into a room and take them down more typically with less casualties. The confusion of this pandemic has opened up the attack surface because all of the people that work in your company are dealing with the confusion of this new business unusual, this new normal, if you would, working from home and not being able to go out, and the stresses that creates, and that opens up the attack surface. And so they're attacking more and more. So your attack surface got bigger through the confusion, and the threat vectors, that is all the bad actors out there, have also expanded because they're doing many, many more, quintuple the amount of attacks that they're leveling against companies all over the place, not just you particularly, but every sector. Now, they tend to target sectors where the money is, as Willie Sutton said when he asked why he was robbing a bank. And so they're attacking you more and more because of the confusion of the current situation. And so you have to evaluate what is the likelihood of that increased attack surface as a result of that. So you just need to evaluate. Lean heavily on your technology companies because they're paying attention to this. One of the things you probably noticed when I was dragging my screen over there, we're keeping a list of all the breaches and hacks. And we keep this list. This literally gets updated hour by hour by hour. Inside our company, we pay attention to everything that's going on. We have eyes and ears out there that tell us everything that's going on, and we evaluate it relative to the sectors that we're responsible for, and we let everybody know. We let our teams know, and we prepare for that. And so it's important that you lean on your outsourced teams to help you do that. You shouldn't have to do that. You have enough to deal with. Make sure, and part of that third-party vendor certification is asking those same questions. Make sure your vendors are doing that as well. You're also going to evaluate the potential impact of those disruptions. So what happens if you get hit? Now, that's already part of your business continuity plan, either the written down one or the one you have up here. So it's just a matter of what's the higher likelihood of it happening because of this increased attack surface and threat vector happening to everybody and how they're working now, et cetera, et cetera. So you're evaluating also what's happening at their house. And again, lean heavily on the people that do it. You don't need to be doing this. They're already doing it for you. Then you're going to want to complete a business impact analysis. Now, that business impact analysis, again, it's in the portal. It's an Excel sheet in the portal, but you can build your own as well. And it's basically saying, okay, these are my key vendors. These are the key business areas. These are the key business areas. These are the key functions and vendors. And what happens if something happens to them, to those areas, to those people, to those vendors, et cetera? What is the impact on the overall business? And the reason why you're doing that, and this should take you, if you have a list of this already done, we've done business impact analysis in under 2 hours for businesses with hundreds of locations. And that's because we already have a lot of the work done for us relative to the business continuity plan we have in place. We already have a list of the vendors. We've already prioritized them. If you haven't done it by doing the first steps that we've given you up here, doing this business impact analysis should be very quick. If you're in a narrow vertical in banking and brokering and whatever the case may be, you should be able to do a BIA if you've done the other steps in well under a half an hour, 15 minutes or less. That's because you know your key vendors, you know what happens if they go out, you know your business. And so this sounds big, it's not big at all if you follow the first steps. Okay, then you're going to list the actions you're going to take to protect your business. And we follow the 4P framework: people, the lives of the workers and family members. So what are you doing to protect them? The processes. How are you protecting the functional processes of your organization relative to this business unusual? How are you protecting your profits? This is not me being a greedy capitalist. I'm a capitalist, but it's me saying that if you're not protecting your profits, you're not going to be operationally sound. You can't be in business tomorrow because you can't be in business if you're not making money. That's called philanthropy. So you want to protect your profits to make sure that you can maintain operational activities beyond the pandemic. A lot of that goes around generating revenue. Yes, some of that goes around budgeting appropriately. Some of that, including looking at your expenses, which is why you need to know who your key vendors are, who your core services are. You can start to see how all of this is interrelated. And then your partnerships. Who is it you do business with that enable you to carry out business in the long term and the near term? So for those of you on this call, which is most of you who currently do business with us, our partnerships, how is that enabling you to carry out your business? And then going through. So list the actions that you're taking to protect your business, looking at the 4 Ps. What are you doing to protect your people, your process, your profits, and your partnership? And when you do that, you actually have a very sound plan to move forward with and to give over to. And in fact, if you just list it off of this and sort of use that sheet to hand off to the auditors along with that business continuity template, you're good to go. Or I'm sorry, to hand off to the department or the secretary. Okay. Again, you need accurate contact lists. We talked about that. We talked about that up here when you're looking at your key products and services and those vendors. So as you're doing those, you're already developing these key contact lists. You also want to make sure you have for all the other stakeholders of your company. Now, when people tend to talk about stakeholders, they tend to think of those people who invested and or who are partners in your business. But the reality is when I talk about stakeholders, I talk about a much broader audience. Everybody whose life is impacted by your business is your stakeholder. You've got responsibilities that extend far beyond the four corners of your office. Your employees are your stakeholders. Their families are your stakeholders because their families rely on you to make sure that you're going to be in business tomorrow, because then you pay them and then they enjoy the benefit of the fruits of that labor, et cetera, et cetera. Your investors, your board members, your partners are obvious stakeholders. Their families as well are stakeholders. Your vendors are your stakeholders, because they're relying on your business. That's part of what, when they're evaluating their people, process, profits, and partnerships, they're looking at you relative to that as well. And so they're your stakeholders. And then if you think even more broadly as we go down that line, they've got people who work there, they've got families to feed, et cetera. Now it starts to get tenuous at best, right? So let's leave that alone. But when you're looking at your contact list, look at the key stakeholders. Who are those people that you need to make sure that you're aware of? Oh, I left out a very important thing if I didn't say it. Your customers are your stakeholders. Your customers are your stakeholders. Without them, none of this happens, right? So you want to make sure you have a list of all your key stakeholders, your partners, your team members, your vendors, and your customers. Now you have, for a lot of you on this call, you have to do that already. You have to do that because you're obligated by some compliance regulation out there that says that you have to do that. For many of you, do that already as a sense of obligation, and I get that completely. And so you want to make sure that you do that. And then maintain, review, and continuously update the plan. Obviously, it's very fluid right now. That changes. When I talk to a lot of our partners and clients, and we say, well, what do we do 6 months from now? The reality is those 12, 36, and 60-month business plans you had are now next week, next month, 3 months from now. That's the reality until we know what the heck is going on out the window. What's going on out there. We have no control over that right now. In fact, it's being controlled by somebody else. Those who sit at the top of the electoral food chain are dictating that today. And so we don't have a lot of control. We can control this week, next week, end of the month. 3 months from now is like a 5-year business plan right now. It almost has no value. You want to be planning for it because you're still going to be around. So getting back to the topic at hand, follow these. You could literally put this together in 2-man days, 2 people days. It wouldn't be hard to do. If you have it in your head, that's going to be the longest. Most of you on this call will be able to do this in under a day. Not terribly difficult. Leverage the platforms that you have at your disposal. If you have our platform, leverage the platform's templates as a place to gather the templates, as to clean them up, as to get them out, as to use them as a repository when somebody says, well, show me how. And so you want to do that. All right? I know that I was a little long-winded there. I apologize. Anybody have any questions? I know there were a few out there that I answered while we went along. I don't see anything else out there. Okay, great. We're going to continue our series next week. This is being recorded. This is going to be distributed to all of you. If you have any questions, you can certainly feel free to reach out to me anytime. You'll be getting an update to this. I really appreciate you all joining us and attending today. If you have any questions whatsoever, my team is happy to ask. And with that, we'll call it a day. Everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay home.